questions we have. So I think we can
Cool.
get started.
Sounds good.
Great to collaborate with you, Tech Cody. It's cool to find other people in this app that are occupying the kind of the same space. Everyone that's kind of joining now, kind of what we're looking to do today. The live is really about our journey into cloud solution architecture and any questions around that. As you guys know from last week, I said I'm going to start to try and go live at least. I want to do twice a week, but I'm at least try to go live at least once a week. Cody is a solutions architect in cloud, and so am I. So we thought it'd be a great topic to, kind of combine our knowledge on and be able to share kind of our experience, tricks, and tips, all that stuff. So happy to get any questions that you guys have as we have the discussion. But that's kind of the parameters of today of just talking about cloud solution architecture, how we got into it, what was our journey, what are we looking forward to, that type of thing. So
Right on. Do you want to give like a little intro about yourself, and then I can talk
yeah,
about me?
so if you guys are tuning in for the first time, Joshua Detective Walker, cloud solutions architect. I work for one of the big four, as they call them. I primarily work in life sciences, healthcare, and banking. I'm ventifriedchicken on TikTok if you haven't seen already. I all my content is really about around cloud, IT, and kind of really the ecosystem of that. So yeah, great to be here. It's been great just growing with you guys on this app. So no further ado, I would love to get your intro as well, Tech Cody.
Cool. Welcome, guys. For those that have joined, I see a few familiar faces. Like Josh mentioned, I do cloud as well. I was a cloud engineer for a little while, and now I'm a cloud architect. I work for the government and primarily focusing GCP, but I do work in all three, Azure and AWS. I don't play around in Azure a whole lot, but GCP and AWS are my main
Same, and I think that's
main
a good
clouds.
a good segue too, because I think we're both cloud agnostic. We work with whatever gets the job done, and in my case, I work with a bunch of different clients, so it really depends on why we pick a certain cloud, um, or at least gear them towards a certain cloud. But I think a lot of times Azure is like the least amount because of just like um, market share a lot of times. So it's interesting to see that still translates to me and you don't work together, but we kind of see the same kind of breakdown on work. So
Yeah, I had someone ask. I think it was even Josh that's in here now. Ask about multi-cloud, and I kind of asked what he meant by that, and the only thing that I've really seen like multi-cloud are like tools that kind of use the APIs into cloud. Something like I don't know if you've heard of Prisma, but it's a
oh
tool
yeah,
that
yeah,
you can like
yeah,
extract all this sort of information from your different clouds, whether it's Oracle, AWS, Alibaba, GCP, AWS. So that's the only like multi-cloud thing I've ever really done. Most of the stuff that I do is like cloud native apps or doing like lifts and shifts. Like we just got done moving our VMware Horizon on-prem into the cloud, and we move those into like AWS workspaces or AWS AppStream, or we move them into like Citrix Cloud that's hosted in GCP and that sort of stuff. So yeah,
no, yeah, I the same. I like multi-cloud for me usually is we'll have like I have a few clients that use two or three clouds for different reasons. So like they'll have like VMware stack, but then they have like an analytics project that's on Google Cloud. So I think we're getting more mature now where we'll have multi-cloud where the vendors will play nicer with each other. I say Google Cloud is very realistic about you know like we're not good at everything, so we'll make it easier for you to hook into other clouds. But I think with AWS and Azure right now, it's not as easy. And we did have a good question in the comments too, actually, from one of my favorite Cloud Gang members, Whittington. He said, when using Terraform, does it just provision the VMs, or can it also deploy apps as well. It can, and to go to your second question, because they kind of go together really well, or is it all in one, or does it need to be combined with something like Ansible? What I've seen is Terraform is just really good at provisioning infrastructure, and then if you're doing any software configuration, Ansible does that a lot better and can get a lot more granular. So when people say Ansible versus Terraform, I think it's a dumb argument because I think they both do two things very different and very well. So,
Yeah.
but love to hear your perspective, Cody, on
Yeah,
that.
no, that's exactly right. Terraform we use for primarily our infrastructure, and then doing apps like Ansible to do like the configuration once it's set up. There's a website called Roadmap SH that has a DevOps roadmap that kind of shows the different tools, and it kind of fits into cloud, and it kind of shows those different, like Ansible, Chef, Salt and Puppet as configuration management, and then Terraform as infrastructure provisioning, like along with like Cloud Formation. And I've never heard of this one. It's called Pulumi. I haven't heard of that tool, but
I
um,
have, but it's been used in like very weird niche cases when I've seen it used. Whereas like Terraform and Ansible are more like a mainstay, and especially in corporate. And then I think you brought up a good segue too, Cody, where like I think although it's great to learn cloud formation, the reason we usually use Terraform is because of the usability. Same thing with Ansible, where obviously you can't bring cloud formation to Azure or Google Cloud, so that's a lot of times where it goes. Another good question from Whittington: is there a cloud agnostic provisioning solution that I can get into so I can use all my free credits? Yeah, I think from a like cloud agnostic provisioning solution, I really that is Terraform for the
yeah,
most part.
yeah.
Yeah.
They all
Yeah.
kind of fall under, whether it's you're doing infrastructure provisioning or configuration management, they all fall under infrastructure as code, but they all have their different pieces that are part of that.
Yeah. So to your point, Whittington, like if you're looking to do like a proof of concept or something, then you could go to your account, apply your credits, and then provision your infrastructure from there. The good thing about Terraform too is a lot of their documentation has like some infrastructure you can start with. So there's very rarely you have to start from scratch when writing Terraform.
Yeah,
I think one of the biggest dev secrets is just we copy and paste a lot. So for everyone out there watching,
yep, exactly. And that's the with the different clouds, it's just getting the different names of things. It's basically the same thing, just different names and different products and different services, just named differently, and learning how each of that works in each cloud.
oh, and that is a big misconception, Whittington. He said, I thought Terraform was only for AWS. No, actually, CloudFormation is the proprietary tool from AWS, but
Yep.
like Terraform is cloud agnostic. You can even provision infrastructure with VMware and a bunch of Oracle Cloud, a bunch of other more niche cases as well with Terraform.
You can think of Terraform as kind of the well, not really GitHub, but they have like a enterprise version and a cloud version of Terraform, and you can basically save your Terraform modules into uh, into enterprise or even like your GitHub or something, and that way you can do the or the change tracking and things like that.
Yeah, and we have another good question from It Burns Us, which I like that that username after you read it out. Can you talk about some first steps to learning these things? For example, a course or a resource. Good question.
How did you get
For
started?
for Terraform, honestly, I always start with probably my trifecta is, or actually really two things. Usually Udemy or YouTube. I do have a Linux Academy subscription too, and they have some really good stuff. But there's a really good Terraform course on Udemy that I think was like less than $20 that I started with. I think that guy's still maintaining that course as well. So maybe I can share that this week or something. Maybe we could figure out a better way of sharing. But if you go on Udemy and you type in Terraform, probably the highest rating rated Terraform course. And Udemy is Udemy, just in case you're looking for spelling. What about yourself, Cody? I don't know how you got into Terraform, but that was how I got into it.
So yeah, just as more of a cloud, I didn't really use it as a cloud engineer doing the day to day work, but as an architect, it's like a your go to like
Yeah,
provisioning tool. So and then with getting into cloud, like specifically, and not just as a general starting in the cloud, just starting out doing virtualization is a good segue into that. I started out as a desktop admin, moved into system administration, and then instead of managing desktops, I moved into managing servers, and then that then kind of moved into doing cloud, and now I manage servers
yeah,
and
that's a good
apps in the
natural
cloud.
progression. And someone asked another question about exams. Do you recommend the AWS cloud before the architect exam? I think what you're saying is the cloud practitioner exam. And this is something I think I've said in comments multiple times, but the cloud practitioner exam is a good way to get started. But it's not, in my opinion, like hire worthy. Like someone would see it on your resume and say, "Oh, I got to talk to that person right away."
Yep.
But if you're brand new, maybe that's a good stepping stone to build momentum because the associate exams are a lot harder than the cloud practitioner. But if you look at some of the recent videos I did too, I shared some links. There's on YouTube, Free Code Camp basically has free courses for the three like top associate exams, as far as the developer associate, the solution architect associate, and the sysops
The
associate as well. So
the
yeah,
the practitioner exam, that's more of like a high level like management
yeah,
overview of cloud,
yeah.
right? And an associate is your day to day work in it, and you're going to get more out of the associate exam than you are going to get in the practitioner.
Another question they ask, and love to get your feedback on this too, Cody, was is C Sharp and Python are they good for a beginner? In my opinion, C Sharp is amazing because you're going to get the lower level detail you won't get with a higher level language. But Python will be a lot easier learning curve for you if you're just starting,
And a
just because it's written in like plain English for the most part. Go
Yep,
ahead,
and a
Cody. Sorry.
scripting language, especially when you're starting to do infrastructure as a code as code in cloud, is it's huge to have that knowledge. And if you can intermix, your programming with networking and your system admin skills, you're gonna be a more complete engineer or architect. And
100%.
definitely Python is a good one to start with. And then like if you know like languages like C sharp, you're gonna be able to help your developers out a lot more. I mean, you don't necessarily need to know it, but just knowing how it works is beneficial, I would say.
The reason I lean towards Python too is because most of the work I do is in AWS, just because they have the most market share. And one of the SDKs that we use a lot is Boto 3,
Yep.
which is basically the Python SDK for AWS. So, just the general Python knowledge I had took me a long way just because I wasn't like starting from scratch. And hopefully I'll be able to do more content on that soon because I think it's the automation slash SDK world of cloud. I kind of think it's like skipped over a lot where it's like if you're working and breathing in cloud and DevOps, that's mainly what you're trying to do,
Yeah.
not the other way around.
Yep,
Yeah.
and doing the in AWS you have the Lambda functions, in GCP you have Cloud Functions, and doing those scripts to do that automation is huge. Like
Yes.
I
Yeah.
had the most recent one I did was an AWS one where it was a Python script to go collect all the AWS workspace uh, computer names, their networking information, their usage. And that would have taken me like days to go into each account because we have hundreds of
Yeah.
accounts, right? And so
Yeah.
to go into each one of those accounts would have taken forever. But I was able to just write one script, take 10 minutes, and it put it all in a CSV, looked clean and pretty, and it was nice. So someone
Same
asked if
here. Yeah.
what's the minimal requirement to join the cloud gang?
Oh, you just gotta exist and have a TikTok account. That's it.
Yep.
Last thing me and Cody want to do is be like another gatekeeper for tech. We need as many people as possible to try and enter this field with the tech deficit growing every year. So I'm glad you guys are tuning in if you're like new and excited about getting into technology for sure.
Yeah, when I first saw your TikTok account talking about cloud, I was just beginning. Like I'm by no means a cloud expert, and I've just recently started within this last year. And to be honest, like being called a cloud architect for me is like I feel like super imposter syndrome because I haven't done it for very long. Literally, this is my first week doing it. But when I first started TikTok, I was starting my journey into that, and you were the first creator I saw talking about cloud. So I was like, oh, I
Oh,
gotta follow
that's
this
really
guy.
cool, man. Yeah, I was happy to see you got promoted because I was liking all of the new content you were doing and your enthusiasm. And to be honest, if being like a cloud expert is kind of a weird thing to say because like, AWS is dropping like services like every week, like literally two or three new services a week. So
It's
we're
insane.
all basically just chasing them constantly. So if you're getting in the cloud and it feels overwhelming, just embrace uncertainty and just do your best. It's still a very rewarding field. I want to make sure I don't lose any of these questions. 1 second.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, I'm not familiar with network, Chuck. I would love to definitely hear more from networking, like IT engineers in general, because I think that's a specialty that's very hard. And usually when something breaks, it's because a choke point in the network. So it'd be great to get more content there.
The the biggest thing I've seen in our organization is exactly that. People not realizing the cloud is a database center somewhere, right? So like I'm
Mm-hmm.
in Utah and GCP has a location here in Salt Lake, which is super awesome because we have a lot of like services that are still connecting to on-prem databases, and they don't realize that you're still making that trek. And like if you're in AWS, the closest one for us is Oregon, and so making that light can only travel so fast. So when you're going from Oregon to Salt Lake, you still have that milliseconds of time to get there, and that does cause kind of a lag sometimes in some apps, depending on how they're made.
100%. And that's a big part of the solution architecture piece where you're trying to make sure that for your primary, you're as close to the data center as possible, but then, your DR is far from that. And someone asked a good question around any recommendations on cloud, any jobs or rotational programs. I think there's been a spring of like I've seen like cloud internships. If you look at AWS Learn, they have like some unique programs that they're starting to spring up. And I think from like I'm self-taught, so I didn't get to like go to university for cloud or anything like that. So usually what I recommend is a lot of the on-demand courses. There's like if you're looking to do a comprehensive place to learn, a cloud guru was a great starting point for me in the beginning.
Yep.
They have a lot of like specific tracks, like I want to do cloud, but I want to do data, or I want to specialize in straight automation. They have stuff like that. Hopefully that helps. Just making sure I'm not losing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pluralsight, along with a Cloud Guru, I also have a Pluralsight subscription, and you can get into Quick Labs with them for free if you have a Pluralsight subscription, and
Oh, nice.
it's awesome.
Pluralsight is a very slept on resource for cloud for sure, and
Yep.
they've been around for a long time and have a crazy library of stuff.
Yep.
Someone asked about starting salary. It really depends on your state and where you're going to work. Someone mentioned they mentioned 80K as probably around a base. That's around where I started. I make a lot more now. But what I'll say with cloud is like it's as long as you're enthusiastic about it, the money will come. Like
Yep.
I feel that way about anything in tech because I was just doing it for the love of the knowledge and I just came into the money from just being a nerd. So, but it's usually a higher salary to start than most dev jobs is what I usually like to say because a software engineer, even though they're super talented, so many frameworks to learn, they're usually there's more of them than cloud people right now for the most part.
Yep. And that's whether you're a software engineer or a system administrator or network engineer, you can make that gateway into cloud one way or another. You're probably
100%.
using cloud at one of those job levels anyways. And so if you want to
Some of the
take it
best
more into a
DevOps
different,
engineers I've ever met were software engineers first, to be honest, because
exactly.
the way they think is just different.
But if you're
Um,
like looking to like start and you don't have any experience, you started out just volunteering, right, for nonprofits.
Yeah, I should talk about more like the beginning. So, I when I first got in, I was like in general programming. I was doing like a little bit of front end, a little bit of back end with like just like nothing crazy on the back end, just SQL stuff,
Yeah.
and then building out like what we called like interstitials, but all it was were like if you had to pick your preferences for email, like building those type of pages, and then from there, I was doing some formal training to get into data science, and somebody was just like, "Hey, have you ran any data science workloads in the cloud?" And at that point, I hadn't even heard of AWS, so I ran back home, and I guess the rest has been history. Of like, I just saw what tools there were, and saw the long term effects, and were like, "This is what I should get into." Someone asked a good question around, do you think I could get a job while I'm in my last year, or should I wait until I graduate? I would definitely take your shots while you're in your last year. I coach a lot of people in college, and I tell them what I wish I would have done when I was in college, even though I didn't do computer science, is that you should start as soon as possible. Like, there's been so many engineers I knew that got, grabbed up straight out of college. And I think when you're in college, you don't realize how much time you have versus once you start in the marketplace, then that's never going to stop again. So definitely use this time wisely.
If you want, and you're in your last year, you can start applying for jobs even, and maybe you could start working full time your last year of college. That's a lot of workload. Balancing your last year, especially as a senior level in college. But if like you wanted to start, or people were like interested in you, definitely, like the more experience, the sooner you can start getting that experience, the better off you're going to be. I
100%.
always use like certifications or college degrees as a gateway into a place, right? But it's not
100%.
it's you're not going to get there until you actually have that experience.
Another good question. How do y'all set up these ingest servers for big data pipelines? Looks like a really hard config. Actually, and this is, I did a talk on this at, there was like an AWS Denver forum not too long ago.
Nice.
And they asked, and really that's like the old way of doing stuff where people would basically set up one big server that could ingest everything. But the smarter way is to use a lot of the data ingestion tools that the big cloud providers have. In AWS's case, like Kinesis Firehose and things of that nature, where you're basically putting all the weight on the vendor, and all you have to do is make sure your endpoints are correct, and you have like all the security features that you can leverage as well, as far as encryption too.
And it blows my
Um,
mind, the cloud providers, that how much they can do. You're talking like petabytes of data. It's insane.
yeah, yeah. You don't want server prices for petabytes of data,
Yeah.
like yeah. Especially because they charge you for egress. Like if it's going both ways, you're gonna get pretty hammered there.
Yep. But like the
Uh,
big data and like BigQuery on GCP side, it just is like mind blowing the things you can do with that. And
yeah,
honestly, that interests me quite a bit, and so I'm trying to learn more about it. But yeah,
yeah, we should talk, man. Like I got into cloud and specifically healthcare and life sciences because of I wanted like whatever I did to matter. And like when COVID hit, it
yep.
really like it was crazy how many as you can imagine how many healthcare applications had to be sprung up to try and fight the virus. So I definitely have big perspective there, and think it's a very exciting space. Someone asked any recommendations to finding a mentor. And I guess Cody, did you have any mentors going into cloud? And then I can definitely answer as well.
So the probably the best, instead of like asking like someone like Josh or myself to be your mentor, you probably want to go somewhere. Like if you're already working for a company and you're looking to get a job, in another team, go to someone in that team and be like, hey, how can I get to where you're at? And that's going to be your like best in my opinion, that's going to be your best way to go about it. And that's how I got the job that I'm at. Is I went to one of the guys on the architect team, and he kind of
That's
like
awesome.
shuttled me. He's like, "Hey, learn this, do this," and it like that was probably one of the best things I have done.
Yeah, and the same thing for me. I was working. It's called Code for America. I forget what they call the smaller brigades, but it's basically like a meetup where they work on tech projects for good. And one of the guys there was like a data scientist, but he was running a lot of his stuff with Lambda. So like that's how I mean honestly, a lot of my tech mentors came from going to like meetups or internally at work. So I agree.
Yeah,
So
and like I'm also a part of a local DEF CON group here in Utah called DC 801, and that group just having a local computer tech group, not necessarily cloud, but just having a local group that's a bunch of tech people is amazing, amazing resource to have. So definitely meetups,
yeah.
local Discord groups, meetup.com to find those groups is a great resource.
Meetups are the lifeblood. Like the job I have now that I've been at almost 5 years came from me just speaking at a meetup, and this was like well, I was doing at the time was working with startups, and someone saw me and was like, "Hey, like we're hiring a lot for cloud right now. You should put your name in the hat, that type of thing." Keeping it real said a really smart thing that is true. I think LinkedIn is another good way to find mentors, like he said.
Yep.
I've done that a lot for exams, where if someone took a specialty exam that I haven't taken, I'll reach out and say, "Hey, congrats on the exam you just passed. What do you recommend for study material?" And people really are responsive to that type of stuff. So
Yeah, and usually that those type of people have just like a bookmark folder full of resources that they're happy to share.
yeah, 100
But
percent.
the as far as like the networking though, like especially people starting out, like that's probably the number one thing you can do getting a job or like moving up or learning is just networking with people and even spaces like
Yeah.
this.
Ahmed said a good one too. Discord, just Discord and Slack channels, because usually whatever community of practice you're interested in, there's probably a big running forum for it.
Yep.
Someone asked us, they have a cybersecurity business, like camera access and IT stuff. How can they start migrating? I would love to get your opinion on this too, Cody. But what I've seen is the best way is to kind of piecemeal it. Like I wouldn't do like a big bang thing where you go all the way in the cloud. I would just migrate a few things that maybe aren't the most vital, just to get some learning mistakes there. But that's usually the easiest way to start migrating some stuff, but not like ones that will harm your business.
Yeah, there's there's multiple paths to migrate to the cloud, and that's probably the best I could say because is doing exactly what you said, taking pieces of it, seeing what you can put in the cloud, and whether that's doing something cloud native or using some sort of cloud service to do that. But because if you just grab it all and you say, all right, I want to replicate what I have now in the cloud, there's no way you're going to do that because that took you years, maybe years to get what you have now, just what with the services you have. So to be able to do that in one big push into the cloud is not, it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
So chunking it up like that is like, yeah, a
I
great way
think
of
you
doing
brought
it.
up a good point too, Cody, where like I think a lot of our job is when something does need to move over, we're looking to re-architect before it usually moves over because if you see a lot of times businesses will what we call lift and shift, where they take what's on premise at their business and they move it into the cloud. It'll become more expensive if you don't like adapt to the cloud as well. So and something Cody said that I think you should check out, and this was for all the major providers, but most like Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, they all have migration services. So like they have specific tools for I want to migrate X to the cloud. So that between like picking what's your non-vital stuff and then using those tools, you should be able to start piecemealing some stuff into the cloud.
There's another creator. Her name's the Cloud Girl. I don't know if you've seen her. She works. I think she works for Google, but she has a website called thecloudgirl.dev, and she has a bunch of like cheat sheets and like uh, things explaining Google Cloud, but she's also got another one called the Migration Journey that talks about whether you're doing like lift and shifts, lift and optimize, move and improved, or refactors. So that's
Hmm.
something I would check out if you're interested in learning about ways to
Yeah, I'll
migrate.
definitely check that out. Yeah, I haven't heard myself, and that's a good resource for the community. Um, Someone asks, uh, so what is your main source of business in the cloud arena? I work for like a consulting firm, so like on their dev team. So I have specific verticals. I usually work in life sciences, healthcare, banking, like sensitive data type applications. But cloud caters to everyone. Like I think Cody, you said you work in government.
Yep.
That's a huge sector. But it's really touching everything now because especially one of the positive effects of or byproducts of COVID was that people had to move to the cloud because of us all working from our house. A lot of us anyway. So
Yep. And like, yeah, I work in government and deal with like multiple agencies in my state, and they all have, tons of different apps, tons of different things that they need to get either moved to the cloud or they're already in the cloud. And, there's just tons of things that you can do.
yeah, sure. What's the most straightforward way to get in the cloud from a sweaty game engine dev background? Honestly, this the I always say the two things are really the certifications, like associate level certifications. Usually, even though it's not a perfect match of like I passed this test, I know cloud. That's not the case, but it's
Yep.
at least like a benchmark. And then I would just work on side projects like I a lot of you guys know my story, but when I say I worked with startups, I was working with them for free, and they were just paying me in AWS credits because I just wanted to gain some experience. So, if you have like depending on what state you live in or city you live in, if you have like a startup accelerator, that might be some folks that need to move into the cloud as a business advantage for funding that you could work with, potentially that you could basically do an in-kind service and have them vouch for you for, the work you're trying to get into. But
Yep.
love your perspective, Cody, on getting started. I know your path was way different than mine.
Yeah, so I started out as a desktop tech. Well, I had previous experience as a PKI admin for 5 years. I was a certificate authority admin at a company called DigiCert. Um, and that's how I got into my enterprise career as in tech. And then I moved around for a while and started as desktop tech, system admin, and then that led me into cloud. And so, if you're starting out, just getting your foot in the door into tech, and then learning, just help desk things or being a system admin or coding even, and then that's a good segue in the cloud.
Yeah, sysadmin I've seen been a good segue for a lot of people into cloud.
Yep.
You said I have a server side path tracer. Is that a good enough project? I can make it into a multi. Yeah, I think that would be a good use case. When I interviewed for like the place I'm at now, I had like three or four like proof of concepts that I was able. I think that most of the time with cloud, they just want you to be able to walk through what you actually built. I think as someone that is now doing a lot of helping with hiring, you can tell if it's just like buzzword bingo as far as like the resume.
Yep.
So anything you put on there, you got to make sure you can explain how it had a real world application and not just like I use Lambda. It's like use Lambda for what, you know?
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
totally new to all of this. Interested, best way to start. Trying to find path after my army career. Oh, awesome. Thanks for your service, solid Mike. I served as well. I did 6 years in the military, four active, two reserve, and was a parachutist, which is why I have like 50-year-old knees now. Um, but yeah, I would say you have a unique advantage that I didn't know about. Like this wasn't around when I got out of the military, but you should definitely look into like probably IT programs or cloud programs that will take your GI bill. And I know a lot of like boot camps that are doing cloud stuff are also accepting GI bills. So something to think about
Have you heard of
because you can do it
Fed
for free.
VTE?
No, I haven't.
So,
That'd be great to talk about that.
so
Yeah.
so if you're in government, and I think even military, yeah, there's a website called Federal Virtual Training Environment that's free if you work for state, local, tribe, or you're a U.S. military veteran that provides free training anything tech. So definitely Google that, check that out. That would be a good resource for learning
That's
as
a
well.
great resource. And I know, Solid Mike, I don't know what you do in the military, but a lot of times, especially because we have a government practice too, they like people that understand the culture, that kind of bridge over and pick up those technical skills. Because unless you've been in it, you understand it, but not as much as someone that kind of lived in those boots. So so just some encouragement there.
And
Um,
and if you can get like a oh, what is it? I'm trying to blank. There's a You can get a top secret. What's the word I'm looking for? Top secret
Clearance or
clearance. Yeah,
yes,
there's a lot of jobs that would open you up to, and being military, it's
100%.
probably
Yeah.
a good gateway in a lot of jobs too, especially even as a contractor.
Yeah, that's a good point. So me and Cody both work for corporate, but there's a lot of contracting opportunities too. Like if you don't see yourself like working for a company and you skilled up in cloud, there's a lot of contracts out there for cloud work. So I know not everyone wants to hitch themselves to a company.
Yep. Yep.
Let's see, clearance. I only know that because okay, cool. Yeah.
Seems like
Um,
half the jobs I see on LinkedIn are requiring some sort of secret clearance.
Yeah, it does go. Whittington said the same. Like it goes away really fast. Like if you don't renew your clearances, they'll be gone for sure.
Yep.
I'm a truck driver, wondering how long does it take from start to first job. So from me starting in cloud, and I was very aggressive, but it took me around 6 or 7 months. Granted, I did have some dev experience before, but like essentially, even when I went in for the interview, everything that was before cloud, the guy straight up was like, "Oh, so like you've only really been in cloud 6 months." So it's not like he even like that weighed in a lot for me, but um, and I think too when I joined cloud, there wasn't as much structure as they have now. Like so between certifications and just like hours that you can rack up that you can show in these certain portals, I think comparing that or combining that with like real world projects, I think I would say I would say it could take upwards of a year, but I think if you're aggressive, for me it took like 6 or 7 months. So
Yeah. And if
six to
you
seven
can,
months.
I always tell people like you can teach someone the tech, but if you can show if you have those soft skills and you're able to show that you have that passion to learn, your employer is much more likely to hire you and be able to then
100%.
know that you can then learn whatever skill that they need. Because a lot of times you don't know what that company uses as far as like the services or tools
That's a
that they
good point.
use. And so if you
Yeah.
can show that, you have that passion for it, whether that's either like having a home lab or, doing things in your own cloud accounts and making projects and pushing out sites or pushing out apps or, that sort of thing and showing that
I
you've
think
had
too.
that passion to do it,
Yeah.
the employer's most
100%.
likely going to be able to train you to do whatever they need.
And I think you touched on something too, Cody. Like when you guys interview too, it's a two-way street, and I think something I was able to add value was although they had a lot of skilled cloud engineers at the time, I was one of the only people they encountered that had worked with certain technologies. So like you could just look for opportunities too of like being like a specialist as well because cloud is so vast. Like I know people that made whole careers off of just knowing Redshift or
Exactly.
just being a database expert. So I think something that we should talk about more in cloud is like most of us have a niche. Like as a solutions architect, you're kind of a catch-all, but you still have certain things that you really know well or that you really like doing.
Hmm.
Someone else asked another question around Python and C Sharp are good to learn for cloud. Someone asked a similar question earlier. What I said is C Sharp is amazing because you get the lower level detail. Like C Sharp is, you can basically get down to like the memory level where Python's a higher level language. But for barrier to entry, if you've never coded before, Python would probably be the easiest one to grasp. And then from there, once you have those core concepts, you can move on to something else.
Yeah, having those scripting abilities as a cloud engineer or architect is huge.
Oh, I'm talking about AWS Redshift to
Oh,
clarify
gotcha.
Whittington.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. These been good questions.
Yeah, a lot of good questions.
Also, if you were to start over from scratch right now, feat would you, what cert would you do first? Huh. I think I would have started the way I did. I started with a developer's associate, like developer solutions associate. It basically was it, but it lent to my skills because I was like a general programmer. If I were to tell somebody else what cert to start with, would probably be the solutions architect associate. Reason being is it's like the dev associate is like a smaller scope, but it's deeper. Where the solution architect it covers a lot more ground. So if someone wanted to like learn the most about the cloud right off the bat, that certification makes you go across basically the whole landscape, even if it's not like a few layers deep. So hopefully I answered your question, but
I would probably have not done the associate certification. I probably would have jumped right into like one of those DevOps or data engineer or
I like that perspective. Yeah.
architect ones.
Do you think just because of like I get what you're saying though because the pro level exams what Cody is talking about or the specialty exams they go like super deep and then if you're talking about employer wise that's like a guarantee that they respect that cert. But the learning curve is a lot harder if you haven't like if you're starting from scratch that would
Yeah,
be a huge undertaking to start that first.
yeah,
So
and they usually require like, or they usually not require. They usually recommend like 3 or 4 years experience for those professional certs. So that it is a big
good point.
undertaking, but that having that associate hasn't really gained me much. I guess it's a good like yeah, you understand the Google Cloud, and that's about it.
100%. Whittington asked another good question. Do you need to do it in tiers? Can I just like YOLO and take a professional exam like that? You could, and I one thing I try to dispel is that my path isn't everyone's path. So if you were ambitious enough and you wanted to go after the pro exam, maybe it's you go after the pro exam, you miss it the first time, but you learn so much knowledge that you can now knock out two associate exams. So to each his own, but it is a higher level of difficulty for sure.
Especially if you're like already like a a DevOps engineer or a developer, you're
Yeah.
much more likely to be able to jump into one of those certifications a lot easier.
And that's a good. I think too, Cody. If you agree, like a lot of I've let a lot of my exams expire because once you get a job, like it doesn't matter as much. Not like now I have like almost 5 years experience in cloud in the trenches, so the
Yep.
certs don't matter as much over
Use that
time.
cert to get the job. You got the job, you have that experience, and that overtakes that cert. So then you use that job then to go to another cert that's a higher level, and then you get that other
Yeah,
job. So you just keep
exactly.
playing that game.
Yeah, I like that approach. It's yeah, because I once you start that new job, you have a new set of duties, a new bunch of technology stack to learn. So then you're like, oh, but I need to stay with the industry, so I'm going to get certed again.
Yep.
Another person asked, are a lot of the positions remote? My position is remote. I was remote before the pandemic. I'm not sure if you're remote as well, Cody,
I
or
am.
if you're gonna. Okay, yeah, but yeah, they have a lot of remote roles. I've posted about this, and it's becoming a more commonplace because obviously with cloud, all you need is the internet. Yeah, so
Yeah, it's nice being remote, but like starting out in a new team, it would be nice to be in person because like learning, starting out in a new team in a new position virtually remotely has been hard because I don't have that team atmosphere where like I have people around me that I can just
100%.
go to
Yeah.
and ask. I've got to like IM them or like jump in a Google Meet. So it's not like hard, but like starting a new job or a new position, like especially if you're new to it, I wouldn't recommend doing remote right off the bat. But if you're experienced, I would say like definitely go remote. And there's a ton of opportunities for remote.
And then Whittington asked another good question: are there jobs that require you to maintain certs? Um, some do, but and to be honest, even where I'm at, in most IT firms, it's a gauge of like how expert you are in the marketplace. So if the company A has 50 cert people and the next one has 100, they're probably going to win that bid. So it is a marker there where that's how a lot of companies gauge expertise. So a
I
lot of
have
companies
had
do encourage you to keep up.
I
Yeah.
have had companies require like a Security Plus certification. I know some government organizations, whether I can't remember who it is. I think it's like the Department of Defense or someone requires all of their employees to have Security Plus, whether they're tech or not, which is insane to me. But there are places that do require certifications, and it's usually like either to maintain a vendor relationship or
Yeah.
some sort of uh, security clearance or something.
That is, yeah, I 100% agree. Another good question from the People's Banker: what is good hardware to have, laptop, desktop? To be honest, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion, I think with you being in cloud, really whatever computer is comfortable to you,
Yeah,
because really, like, you're not running a lot of like you're not relying on your hardware for what you're trying to do. As long as you have a strong internet connection, whatever feels best for you. So don't go all in on like some gigantic rig when it's all getting computed by AWS or GCP or Azure anyway.
yeah.
Um,
And
would
like I
you
have a
guys?
Mac, but I
Yeah,
also
go
have a
ahead.
Windows machine. So
Same.
like you can
Yeah.
do, and even now with Windows having a Linux subsystem, like it's just I totally agree with you. It's whatever you feel comfortable in, unless you have like a
And
specific requirement for one thing.
and someone asked, what would you guys recommend paying for a boot camp or start with Udemy, Coursera, Google Certs? It depends. So that's why I never like. I'm not one of the people to bash university either, because I think it depends on what type of person you are. When I got started in cloud, I already had a family. Like I couldn't go back to school or a boot camp because I couldn't like drop everything to do that, which is why I was self-taught for the most part. But if you like the camaraderie and you like having someone around, I would definitely say a boot camp or university. If you're a self starter and you can work around your schedule and you can have that discipline to work on it every single day, then you can definitely get by doing Udemy, Coursera. Because at the end of the day, as long as you have a real world project to work on, something that you actually want to build, that's where you're going to learn the most. So,
Yeah, exactly. And I'm starting my second bachelor's degree because my first one was in business management, and so I'm starting another one in computer science, and I'm doing that specifically because I need that structure around, and I want to get more into programming and like C sharp and Java and those like the software development languages. But like if when I was learning HTML or like cloud or uh, any IT specific things, I was able to do that through training courses online, whether that was Udemy, Free Code Camp, Pluralsight. I had that passion enough to, well, not really passion, but drive to stick with those training courses. So yeah, it definitely depends on you and how you learn.
I can say a general thing for anything technical you're trying to learn is just consistency, because I think a lot of people try to crash through it through a weekend, or you're spotty. Either two of those things usually don't stick. So it would be better to like work on something 10 to 15 hard minutes a day versus like doing 2 hours here, taking a week off, then picking it back up. So
Yeah. And I always see it, especially like with programming specifically, I always see people like, oh, go learn how to build a calculator, learn how to build tic
Yeah,
tac toe. Like I get so bored with those so quickly.
me too.
And where I learned the most, I actually paid for my college, my first degree doing website design. And so where I actually learned the most is like, learning how to build a website to show my portfolio, or build a website for my family that had a trucking business, that sort of thing, where
Mm.
you actually have like a stake in it. That's where I learned the most in those kind of projects.
Same. The startup situation was like they were paying me in credits, but I was in some ways I was kind of the factor between them getting funding or not because they were going to a VC and saying I have this stack. So it's like I agree with Cody where like learn enough to know what's out there and what you and then it will spark ideas of what you could potentially build and just like set a sight on building a project. But yeah, I had the same situation. A wife and a kid. I basically went to my whatever crappy day job I had, and then at nighttime worked on on that. So just communicate like us being in similar. Communicate with your family that I'm gonna need this block of time every night or so, and you can definitely still do it because that's what I did.
Yeah. Where do you plan on
Yeah. Go.
going after your current job? Do you have plans
Um,
for the future?
I don't, because right now I'm pretty happy where I am,
Just
and
content?
I think I no, I'm pretty happy. I'm not a person that can live in content. Like if it was like then I would probably be looking, but I'm pretty happy. I think what kind of put a damper on everything, but that's the whole globe is the pandemic because I miss traveling for work and like being like going to a customer's office and helping them build in person.
Yeah.
Someone asked, "What about yourself? Like Cody, do you think you're going to GCP after this because they're hiring like crazy?" Like,
Yeah, no, I'm super happy with where I'm at now as well. I probably well, I'm torn between staying in the government versus going private, because where I'm at in government now, it doesn't pay near as well as the private industry, but my work life balance is way better where I'm at now. And I've chased money before, and that's always done me wrong.
I'm in the same boat. Like, so I make enough to be happy, and I know I could probably get more money like tomorrow, but it'll probably be at the sacrifice of like being able to do this or
Exactly.
YouTube or run the nonprofit that I with and all that stuff. So.
Yep. Cool.
See what time we're at. I guess I have a hard stop at 4 Eastern, but
We're about
this has
there.
been a great conversation.
Yeah,
Does
that was
anyone have
good.
any last minute questions? Because I know we have like,
Just a
we're
few
going to
minutes.
be at the top at the hour.
Yeah, that was
Hopefully
awesome.
you guys got a lot out of this. Yeah,
Uh, hopefully it saves this live and we can post it later.
that'd be awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, that was great. That hour flew by quickly. I was worried about filling up the time.
Whittington asked a question about so if I cop the solutions architect cert, what else would I need to land some more interviews? So that cert, and I would say you had already one good project that you mentioned earlier. I say if you had like two more of those, then that would give you a compelling story. The way I look at resumes is a story. Is you're telling them like why am I compelling enough to work on your team? So I think one project is like that could have been like I grabbed code from this guy blah blah. Whereas if you do something three times in a row with different technologies, that's less of a coincidence. You know what I mean?
And
So
if you have like a specific employer or specific job that you're looking at, go look at what they require for that job and try to show your skill in those things.
100%. Another good question. What's the difference between a DevOps architect and a DevOps engineer? I think I'll answer in reverse. So the DevOps engineer usually is like the person that's like hands on keyboard every day. They both are, but one is like part of the team, maybe a team lead, is working on probably like batches of tasks where the DevOps architect would be like almost like the overseer, like the person that, like how architects usually work for us, they're either in the beginning like scoping the big picture project or they're hovering over a bunch of projects to make sure that improvements happen and things get fixed correctly, So,
Yep, no, you
um,
answered that exactly
yeah.
right. with the DevOps, I would say like an engineer, they're the day to day person, and then like you said, the architect's the big picture guy.
Yeah. So that's how when people ask the progression to architect, I think it just comes with time because I hate to say it this way, but I think you get burned enough times where you're like, you start thinking about more stuff when you build it, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
No.
you think things out a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, Cody. Hopefully, we can collaborate on some like so. You said something that bothers me too on like learning stuff where basically people do projects for stuff no one is ever going to use. Like, I already have a calculator. I don't want to build a calculator in Python. so, so maybe we can collaborate on some real world projects that people can like actually put in their portfolio. Is what I want to start working on for this last quarter of this
Did you
year.
say you have a nonprofit?
Yeah, it's been around like 5 years now. It's a diversity nonprofit. Black Orlando Tech, super hyper localized, but it's mainly to upskill people within our dense area to enter the field of tech. But
Cool.
yeah,
Maybe we can chat some
like
about that and see
my
if I could
passion
help out.
project. Oh, for sure, that'd be awesome. We always need cloud people.
Yeah.
Any last minute questions, guys?
Probably be a good ending spot. Seems like we hit a lull.
Yep.
So
Well, thanks everyone for joining. Cody, I'll look to join your individual when I can for sure. And hopefully, vice versa, and I'll look to try and do at least one live a week, but trying to aim for two. And we'll just keep building as a cloud game together. And there's no dumb questions. You guys should stay encouraged because this is probably the best decision you'll make in your life is getting into technology, in my opinion.
yeah, for sure. Thanks, Josh, for doing this with me. It was really exciting and a lot of good questions today. So
100%.
it's good to keep the community going like this too.
Great.
All right, dude.
All right,
Well,
everyone.
have a good day. See ya.
You too, man. Talk to you soon.